What is going on, everyone? In this video, we'll be taking a look at asymmetrical encryption. For those of you who are unfamiliar with encryption, essentially, when you are on the internet, you don't want to have your packets in transit to be out in the open. So you actually want to encrypt them because obviously if you're doing your online banking and a malicious hacker is using some kind of packet sniffer like Wireshark to steal your packets, well then they can get your password and that would be really, really bad. And so the most basic form of encryption is the Caesar cipher. And so I have a picture right here. Essentially the way it works is you will have a single key, so it's a symmetrical encryption algorithm, and it's a one-to-one mapping of letters. And so you can imagine kids who are in class and they invent their own language and they're able to pass around notes that way. And as long as both kids have the key, they're able to decrypt the message as well. Now, when it comes to information technology, we don't like to use symmetrical encryption. The reason being is that you have to give the key to the other party. And so the moment you do that, if some nefarious person is listening, then they could steal the key and it's basically cracked. And so we use what's called asymmetrical encryption. And let's try that again. So the way asymmetrical encryption works is you will generate a public and a private key pair. Okay. And the public one will only be used to encrypt messages. The private key will only be used to decrypt messages. And so let's say you want to do some online banking. You will give your public key to the bank, and then all the traffic it sends back to you, it will use your public key to encrypt it. And only you who have the private key are able to decrypt it. And if some malicious hacker gets their hands on the public key, it doesn't really matter because they can only just encrypt messages that only you can read. And so you're going to keep the private key really, really safe, but the public key, it doesn't matter, anyone can use it. And one of the most commonly used asymmetrical encryption algorithms is RSA. And RSA takes advantage of a special property of modulo, or remainder. So let's say that we had the following equation. Okay. And then let's say I just gave you the value 8. Would you be able to get back to 2 to the power of 3? Well, you could just look at the different factors. So here we have 8, 1, 4, 2, and then 2, 2. So we could say that 8 is equal to 2 times 2 times 2. However, modulo works a little differently. So let's say we had 11 modulo 4. So for those of you who need a quick reminder, this is essentially division, but the output, we get the remainder. So 11 divided by 4 is 2 with a remainder of 3. And if I just gave you 3 and I asked you to work backwards, well, it would be a little harder, right? But you might still be able to do it. The problem is, or I guess the advantage to this, I should say, is that if the numerator is very, very large And in the case of RSA, the bits go from 2024 to 4096, or 2048, I should say, my bad. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with binary, right, the first digit here would represent a 1, this would represent a 2, and so on. And you can see after 7 bits, we're already at 128. So you can imagine that 4096 of these bits, this number would be huge. Like, it would be absolutely massive. And you were just given the remainder 3. And so you know, trying to figure out what number to the modulo would equal 3 is next to impossible, because there's so many possibilities. And so, oh, I screwed up again. So the way RSA works is you take the message, and again, messages, right? All characters are bytes, and bytes are 8 bits long, so this is actually a number. And you raise it to the power of the public key. And then you take the modulo of some special number, and you'll get the encrypted message. And if you wanted to decrypt it, well, you would take your encrypted message, you would raise it to the power of your private key, you would take the modulo of that, and you would get the message back out in plain text. So again, because the private key and public key, you know, can go as high as 4096 bits, there's no real way that computers can figure out the value from that. And so in going through all the different possible values, it would actually take even fast computers like centuries to do. And so that's kind of how it works. This is going to probably change with the advent of quantum computers, because quantum computers can check all these different states simultaneously. The last thing I'd like to talk about is SSL certificates. And so whenever you visit a web page via HTTPS, you will get a certificate. And what is contained in the certificate is, 1, the public key. Okay, so if I visit my bank, they'll provide me the public key in order to encrypt the traffic that I send to them. They're also going to send a digital signature. And how a digital signature works is they will use their private key to encrypt the web page that you're on. So although you only want to use your private key to decrypt and your public key to encrypt, they actually work the other way around as well. But if you would use your private key, then it's possible for people to figure out what it is. And so what they'll do is they'll encrypt the web page, and then they will take a hash of it. And for those of you who don't remember what hashes are, essentially we'll just get a fixed length string. And the last component of the certificate is the digital signature provided by the certificate authority. And so the benefit to digital signatures is that you know that that web page is associated with whoever owns that private key. Now, that in itself is not enough because, again, someone could theoretically get access to the private key. And so we use a digital signature provided by a certificate authority, which is essentially a third party that we all agree is trustworthy, and they verify the identity of the person with the private key. And so if you need a SSL certificate, what you would do is you would generate your key pairs, and then you would create a certificate request, and then you would send that to a certificate authority, and then they would validate your identity and whatever else, and then they would send you back a certificate. And so thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments.